It's like we're in hell or something.
No, I can't imagine hell being much worse.
Secret of the Mimic is hell to go through. No, I don't think the game is all that terrible, and what it has to offer is really valuable. I mean, okay, Big Top, or who I love to call the Pringles Man section, still gives me nightmares to this day with how frustrating it was. Also wasn't a big fan of the Parade Float section, and Tiger Rock. Tiger Rock. Yes, there were parts that I wish were better, and I still think it's kind of funky to see old-timey versions of Monty and Roxy in 1979, but that isn't why I think the game is hell. What I mean when I say this is that Murray's costume manor is Arnold's personal underworld purgatory. Two things to address with this. First, my theories I come up with aren't designed to explain anything unless you want them to explain something. I create my theories on the grounds of let's assume this could happen instead of let's assume this is happening, and look for what would be required or how far you'd have to stretch logic in order for my theory to happen. In other words, I'm just asking you, hey, wouldn't it be neat to look at one of the games this way, or if this was happening? I'm not against people believing my theories or think they might explain something in a game, but for the most part, I just enjoy using my imagination for looking at the Five Nights at Freddy's games from as many different angles as I can. Maybe this is why I'm so bad at recapping the lore. Secondly, this theory might sound real familiar if you're a fan of Silent Hill. Fans of Silent Hill 2 might ask me, wait, are you seriously cribbing a theory from this game and applying it to Five Nights at Freddy's? Those of you watching this who are only FNAF fans might be real confused. So I'll shortly explain the Silent Hill 2 loop theory before I continue. In Silent Hill 2, James Sunderland is looking for his wife Mary in the titular town because she wrote him a letter to meet him there. There's just one little problem. Mary died of that damned disease, and it's impossible for dead people to write letters. No, that's not a spoiler, this is all explained at the start of Silent Hill 2. So James is looking for his dead wife or whoever wrote that letter for him. The loop theory suggests that James might already be dead before Silent Hill 2 even starts, and he's trapped in the haunted town forever. Every time he realizes what's going on, or whenever he's supposed to die, he simply resets in the public restroom when he first entered the town and has his memory erased. That's the most watered down version of the theory I can give anyways. I'm sure I left something out here or there. I'm going to reassure Silent Hill fans by explaining that my theory is different from Silent Hill 2's loop theory. I don't believe Arnold is stuck in a time loop, and by the time Secret of the Mimic starts, it's plainly obvious that other people, or in this theory's case, someone, has gone through the costume manor multiple times, changing things. Typically in time loops, things mostly stay the same, with only superficial changes that ensure no other path can be taken outside of what the loop wants. In Secret of the Mimic, so much has changed inside the costume manor before the game starts that it's impossible not to notice them. Another huge difference between my theory and the Silent Hill 2 loop theory is that James is stuck in the town of Silent Hill, not hell. Some people believe that Silent Hill is a representation of James' personal hell or purgatory, but the reason why I don't believe this is because you don't share going through your own personal hell with other people who had mostly nothing to do with you. Arnold is mostly alone in the costume manor, while James went through Silent Hill with a number of other people. In fact, this is why some people don't even think the Silent Hill 2 loop theory is even true. So how can Arnold not be stuck in a time loop if he's stuck in his own personal hell in the shape of Murray's costume manor that somewhat resets every time he dies or believes he's completed his objective? Well, first let's answer the more important question of what Arnold could have done while he was alive to end up in hell or purgatory. If my theory were to be correct, then I don't believe the events of Secret of the Mimic happened in the world of the living as they did in the game. When he was alive, Arnold was a mechanic for Fazbear Entertainment and one of their loyal lapdogs. In fact, he was so loyal, he would sometimes even work a little overtime for them. This loyalty was rewarded with gift cards, head pats, a little overtime pay, and a attaboy. Arnold must have thought the world of Fazbear Entertainment and believed they could do no wrong. One night, while driving home from working a 14-hour shift, with some overtime, Dispatch called him to the location of Murray's costume manor. Dispatch promised him another gift card if he quickly entered the building and retrieved either an endoskeleton Edwin Murray made that could fit inside any costume, or the blueprints for it. Like the loyal lapdog he was, Arnold entered the costume manor and not only got the blueprints for the Mimic, but also the blueprints for all the costumes and animatronics. This included the blueprints for the Springlock suits. I'm sure you all know where this is going. Now, I'm fuzzy on whether Arnold would have retrieved the Mimic with the blueprints while he was alive, but I'm pretty sure he didn't face as many obstacles as in the game we played. For one, the building would mostly be powered off, and living Arnold would have brought a flashlight with him. For 2, I highly doubt every animatronic would have actually gone after him, especially if the building had barely any power. Even if the Mimic was going after Arnold, he's a mechanic and could deactivate it or rig up some method to stop it from getting in his way. That's if the Mimic was even powered on and not hidden away in the first place. I'm sure he faced some danger while going through the actual costume manor, but it wasn't anything he couldn't handle. Fazbear Entertainment wouldn't want to shatter Arnold's wholesome image of them and lose their most loyal mechanic by sending him to his death and risk having him survive it. Yes, I'm using logic and common sense with a company who is at best known for being incompetent, but they have shown that they know how to cover their tracks before to get what they want. It's unclear how Arnold died, whether he got to live a full life working for Fazbear Entertainment, I highly sincerely doubt it, or through some other on-the-job accident. He most likely died after his van exploded in one of the many ways that fire trap could have gone up. Man, wouldn't it suck if after a successful day's work you died because your vehicle just up and exploded on the way home? Damn. However, I'm going to argue for the sake of my theory that Arnold Teeter didn't take him out and he got to witness the domino effect of all those blueprints he retrieved for Fazbear Entertainment. Arnold could very well be responsible, or at least feel like he was responsible, for every bad thing that happened with Fazbear Entertainment. The bite of 1983, due to the failure of the spring-lock suits that Arnold retrieved the blueprints for. The bite of 1987, due to Fazbear Entertainment trying to replicate the Mimic, Arnold got the blueprints and possibly even the endoskeleton itself for. A man using a yellow spring-locked animatronic rabbit suit to lure children into the back room so he could murder them? Arnold must have believed he was responsible for the creation of that suit the murderer used. Even if some or most of these events weren't Arnold's fault, he must have felt extremely guilty and like he let his company down, especially when they started bleeding into the red. When Arnold died, however he died, he must have felt subconsciously like he didn't deserve to go to heaven and his guilt was too heavy for him to move on. That's how his ghost or spirit entered this hellish version of Murray's. Well, now that we've answered the question of how Arnold could have entered hell, let's explore what most of the things in Secret of the Mimic could represent before providing the evidence of how this theory could actually work. Obviously, the costume manor and even the mansion by extension could represent the place where he started ruining everything for everybody. Dispatch is who he subconsciously blames for everything going wrong for Fazbear Entertainment because it was him who asked Arnold to retrieve the blueprints and endoskeleton to begin with. This could be why Arnold acts so hostile towards Dispatch from the beginning of the game. The Mimic represents Arnold's guilt with how it's always hunting him down. The way it changed its costumes could show Arnold trying to cover up his guilt with better memories of his life and the company he worked for. However, the Mimic, just like his guilt, can see right through it and continues to hunt him down. The way the Mimic goes after you in this game is actually a decent representation of how guilt and depression works. You can cover it up and even blind it for a time, just like when it was blinded when wearing Jackie as a costume, but it always comes back to haunt you and try to drag you down with it. Jackie, before being worn as a costume for the Mimic, could represent Arnold's childhood, one of his precious memories that can help keep him sane in this environment, and how even his childhood memories got corrupted by his guilt. Big Top Pringles Man could represent the overwhelming perception he felt people had of him, especially within the company, and how others' watchful eyes always loomed over him. At first, Pringles Man is open and welcoming, much like how Fazbear Entertainment and his co-workers were when he first joined the company. Then he turns hostile and suddenly his gaze isn't as welcoming or friendly, like how he must have believed people saw him when things started going downhill for Fazbear Entertainment. Big Top actively hunting down and chasing Arnold could symbolize what he imagined people wanted to do to him after the reputation of Fazbear Entertainment totally tanked. The speaking mannequins could exacerbate this feeling of people surrounding him and closing in when things got bad. The Foxy Puppet Show could represent Arnold's happiest memories with Fazbear Entertainment and the reason why he worked for the company. As a mechanic, he felt like part of the shows and the reason why they kept running. He must have enjoyed observing the children and their parents watching the robots and puppets he kept in working order with amazement. The show crashing down represents his world and reason for working at Fazbear Entertainment collapsing all around him once the bad news kept on piling up. Nurse Dolly could represent Arnold's family and how at first they cared about him, but the more he worked at his job, the more they grew distant, aggressive, and unrecognizable. Now, there is cut dialogue where Arnold explains that his wife left him and he hasn't seen his kid in years, but I'm not counting that because it was cut. Yes, I included a reference to the cut 14-hour work shift earlier, but that was because it would have sounded more reasonable when Arnold was alive than a bizarre 32-hour work shift. Arnold's family here just means his general family, or whatever you want it to include. The Mimic wearing Dolly and going after him while saying lines like, "You need a lobotomy," represents how he felt his family must have hated him and wanted nothing more than for him to be dead for everything he felt he caused. Chica is the same as the other costumes Arnold put over the Mimic or his guild. Maybe the more goofier memories and how even those won't save him from the overwhelming torment he's experiencing. Tiger Rock could represent all of the other horrible things that happened at the Costume Manor taken a final form of some kind. Arnold could have visited Murray's frequently back when it was up and running, when Henry and William were working out the contracts with Edwin. He could have witnessed Murray's Costume Manor's slow decline and eventual foreclosing, along with every other terrible thing that happened at the place. This is pure speculation on my part, I must admit. Otherwise I would have to say Tiger Rock represents David, which wouldn't make sense since David wasn't Arnold's son. The Fat Cat could represent Arnold witnessing the accident that killed David and how it sent Edwin nosediving into self-destruction, because Arnold might have been the kind of guy to take tragic events he witnessed to heart, and there was an unhealthy supply of tragedy at the Costume Manor. It very well could have accumulated into its own physical manifestation that attacks in a supernatural way. Think of it like an imaginary bully Arnold thought of that can actually hurt him. F10N4 or Fuanor could represent Arnold's conscience and courage, always egging him on and poking at him a few times. It was through the help of Fuanor or his conscience that he could find out what happened to Edwin Murray and clear up that Fazbear Entertainment was always a terrible company to work for. The secret boss fight moon could represent how Arnold sees himself, someone who was at first a shining example for everyone, but is now a fat, overweight, ugly, dim bulb that only gets in the way of everyone he encounters. If this is how Arnold views himself, then I need to make it transparently clear to the man that he's still beautiful to me. This secret boss encounter could be Arnold confronting himself and overcoming all the guilt and worthlessness he feels about himself. Hell, what I just said could very well explain the mystery of who's hiding in the moon costume, but probably not. So two things. I know what some of the characters or hosts might represent are a bit of a stretch, and that you might want to tell me Arnold wasn't actually responsible for anything that happened to Fazbear Entertainment. Well, you and I had the benefit of foresight and hindsight to know that, from Arnold's perspective, when he was alive, he wouldn't have. He would have retrieved the blueprints, thought he did a good job, then when he saw the news come out about the first Springlock incident, he totally would have connected it to the blueprints he retrieved. I'm also just using my imagination to connect things in the game to my fun little Costume Manor purgatory theory. Speaking of which, what about the messages? These actually better support my theory, because I don't think Fazbear Entertainment would send Arnold into a building with such numerous incriminating evidence. This guy is a mechanic. I'm sure Fazbear would be certain he knows how to use computers and read digital messages. They supplied him with the data diver, for crying out loud. I'm 111% certain that the real Fazbear Entertainment would have scrubbed the manor clean of any evidence of wrongdoing before sending the living Arnold in there to find the blueprints and technology they couldn't. Remember, this is the company who in Five Nights at Freddy's 1 would wait 90 days until after the carpets were replaced and areas were thoroughly cleaned and bleached before filing a missing persons report. I'm pretty certain they would have gotten rid of all those Edwin audio diaries, or at least the tapes from all the ones they could find, before letting Arnold in. All the messages you find in the game could be echoes from the Costume Manor's past most relevant to Arnold. Whatever's in charge of Purgatory or Hell in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe might be relaying to Arnold all the information he needs to know and piece together in order to do what he needs to and move on. Now let's talk about the supposed other mechanics who were sent in before Arnold to retrieve the endoskeleton. Dispatch even said that others were sent in before him. So there we go, theory disproven, right? Not exactly. Purgatory and Hell have a way of messing with people, especially if it wants them to see the error of their ways. My favorite movie of all time outside of 9 is Shutter Island, which is about U.S. Federal Marshal Teddy Daniels investigating a missing persons case on an island that serves as a mental hospital for the criminally insane. I won't give away what happens in that film in case you want to see it, but the way some things happen in that film could also be happening at the Costume Manor to keep Arnold investigating what's really going on. Another source I could pull is BioShock Infinite, where things also aren't as they seem in that game. The point I'm making is that Purgatory or Hell could be manipulating Arnold, or Arnold could be manipulating himself into believing a previous team went in before him. The truth, however, could be that all the corpses we find throughout the game could be Arnold's previous attempts to make it through Murray's. Ask yourself, why don't we see any of the faces of the dead mechanics outside of age rating, of course? Why do all of the mechanics have the exact same suit, gloves, and build as Arnold outside of the desert using his model assets for them, I mean? It could be very well because these bodies are reminders to Arnold of how far he's got towards discovering the truth. In a twisted way, it could be whatever this place is, encouraging him not to give up and keep going until he sees us through to the end. What about the messages recorded in the logs from previous mechanics? Have you ever wondered why the titles are garbled up to the point they look like swear words? These could be Arnold's recordings of what he experienced through his previous attempts coming with him when he resets at the beginning of the manor again. Reviving Arnold could be a reality-altering power that corrupts things he has interacted with before, even in purgatory or hell. This is why certain things get reset while others are only corrupted or stay in place. One of the messages mentions a Thompson, but that could be someone Arnold knew or heard about that worked at this place whose screams echo like a recording throughout this ghostly version of the costume manor. An annoying thing people say to disprove loop or purgatory theories that involve witnessing dead copies of the player character is, why don't we find the body of where we died last in game when our character is currently killed? Well, to answer this question, A, due to the limitations of current gaming hardware, Secret of the Mimic can't just keep the body of each death when it happens to the player. Let's say someone who is really bad at the game is playing and constantly dies to each and every enemy. Eventually, the costume manor would be filled with so many corpses of their previous deaths that it would start to be taxing on the game consoles just to keep track of them all. Speedrunners and game breakers would also exploit the hell out of this, pun entirely intended, to cheese a lot of areas. Even if you're playing Secret of the Mimic on the beefiest gaming PC with all the best specs money can buy, a game mechanic where a record of all your player deaths were recorded could break the engine it's running on. Yes, game engines have limitations just as much, if not more limited, than the hardware it's running on. Secret of the Mimic still runs on Unreal Engine 4, and a game mechanic that keeps adding ragdoll player models to the game wouldn't play very nice with it. B, Steelwool would have to design a fully mapped out player model for Arnold, complete with his face. Kinda defeats the whole purpose of keeping Arnold's identity hidden so players can project themselves onto him. C, having pre-rendered bodies in the manor allows Steelwool to be spooky while adding merit to my theory without needing a pile of deceased to be found in every room. The biggest piece of evidence I have in favor of my theory is found at the very beginning of the game. When Dispatch asks Arnold how he's doing, he says something rather interesting.
Well, since you asked, I just finished a 36-hour shift, and I'm struggling to stay awake. Frankly, I tried to tell my manager that I can't work like this anymore.
I don't know much about mechanics, but I'm pretty sure they don't usually work 36 hours. I also realized earlier in the script I said he only worked 32 hours, not 36. Look, this video was a lot of work, and while that's no excuse, slip-ups are gonna happen. I still believe it's not normal for mechanics to work over 30 hours in a day. I have a dad who used to work on the oil rigs as a mechanic, and something about mechanics in that field of employment is even when you think you're off the clock, you're not really off the clock. I remember as a kid my family being woke up by the phone in the middle of the night because my dad was being called in to fix something. I know lives of mechanics can be rough, but unless you're living on something with your own personal bunker, most likely in the middle of an ocean, even landlocked oil rig mechanics aren't required to work 36 hours straight. I highly doubt a fast food company who entertains children with cartoony robots would need a mechanic on call 24/7 who needs to work over 30 hours. What could Arnold have been even doing that his previous shift required him to work over 30 hours? Well, this is because Arnold wasn't working his previous shift before the start of the game. He had just got done going through the costume manor. There's a bit of a meta thing going on with this line because most first-time players are going to take around 20 to 30 hours to complete Secret of the Mimic if they don't have a guide handy and get lost. When Arnold resets, his memory doesn't, and he remembers everything he went through in the previous costume manor run. He's trying to rationalize everything going on and stop himself from going completely loony, even though he knows that he's heading right back to the place he just came from. No, I just got off a 36-hour shift. Yeah, a 36-hour shift as a mechanic for a fast food company. This is totally normal, but the hours are kind of long and I really need to tell my manager I shouldn't be working these long hours. Wait, I can't refuse these hours or what I'm doing because if I do, Fazbear Entertainment will dock my pay and repo my truck. Yeah, that's totally what they do. Well, I guess I have to do whatever Dispatch tells me. Man, this sucks. This could be why Arnold said to Dispatch, "I hate you," coldly after being told what it is he's about to go and do again. So to wrap up, I'm going to try my best best to think up anything that might disprove my theory and see if there's an explanation or a way around it. I'll also try to bring up other things I forgot to mention earlier that might help this theory's case. Something about the previous mechanics who went in is that everyone calls them Teen 12 because of the number 012 on their white shoulder bands. I tried looking at Arnold's model to see if he actually had the same Teen 12 association, but results were inconsistent. At best, it looks like his player model has no bands while his animation model has blank white ones. Then again, it could just be a crappy cosplay, fan model. Sorry, old references die hard. Just because Arnold doesn't have anything on his arms doesn't mean he wasn't part of the same team or those bodies weren't him. Arnold's player model not having any armbands could have just been a modeling error on Steel Wool's part, and they meant to put armbands on so players would decide themselves whether he was part of the same team or a different faction altogether. Wouldn't be the first time Steel Wool messed up something in this game. Arnold being able to go through the costume matter as coherently as he did despite not sleeping for 36 hours and surviving everything he went through should be impossible. Most players who get a full good night's sleep have died a few times to these enemies. Well, if Arnold is dead and he's done this song and dance many times before, he would know about everything coming up and how to avoid it. I've seen some theories suggest that Arnold himself is an endoskeleton or even a mimic, being sent in to retrieve a mimic endoskeleton. Really pulling a Charlie here, but why would Fazbear Entertainment send a mimic endoskeleton that they already have to retrieve the exact same thing? You could argue the one in the manor has gone rogue and they're fighting fire with fire, but why would Fazbear Entertainment treat one of their endoskeletons like an employee? Not trying to shoot down anybody's theories here, but Arnold being stuck in hell or purgatory doomed to repeat doing the same thing over and over until he learns what he's supposed to do just makes way more sense to me. Arnold being able to find secrets like he does, most likely with the help of the player having a guide handy, is another good indication that he's repeated going through the manor several times without his memory being wiped. The one thing that could really break my theory is when Arnold runs into War and is shocked to learn it's a computer that can mimic voices. If Arnold has gone through the caution manor over and over already, this really shouldn't faze him in the slightest. Maybe Arnold is also experiencing the parachute ending for the first time with us when we take control of him. Now, if there would be one reason why I would want my theory to be true, it would be this. The New Game Plus and Good Ending might actually be canonical to Secret of the Mimic and Five Nights at Freddy's as a whole if my theory was confirmed. How? Well, if the Costume Manor was a place in purgatory or hell constantly resetting Arnold every time he died, but not his actions or memories, New Game Plus would just be a continuation of his journey. New Game Plus allows you to go through the game with all the collectibles you nabbed during your previous run. On top of that, you get an adorable plushie of that bastard who hunts you down in the parking garage. I hate you, Tiger Rock. If you haven't completed New Game Plus and the Good Ending, hey, I don't blame you, neither have I. Getting the Good Ending is an absolute chore to achieve because it requires A, getting every single item in a present that requires a guide or half your life to find on your own, B, fully completing the Moon.exe game that requires a guide or the other half of your life to finish on your own, and C, carrying that Tiger Rock plushie with you throughout the entire run, which doesn't require a guide but sacrificing half of your sanity and will to live instead. By the time you actually complete the Good Ending, even with the guide telling you exactly what to do, if you didn't hate Secret of the Mimic before, oh you will after this experience. This ending should only be attempted by the masochists and die-hard fans who need to prove they can 100% these games and know every little thing about the lore. For the rest of us, there's the internet to explain how this goes. My theory's interpretation of this ending is having gone through the Costume Manor and Mansion multiple times learning all their secrets, Arnold is finally able to confront his guilt and put it to rest. Knowing how terrible of a company Fazbear Entertainment really was and that everything would have happened to them regardless of him getting those blueprints, he moves on to a better place. Well, that is unless that fan theory some have about Arnold becoming Sun is true, in which case, wow, would it suck to exist in this universe. Thanks for watching this far because it makes you my shining star.